I no longer know what is real. I don't know if I ever did. It all began with a silence so profound, so oppressive, that it seemed to have weight. It was as if the very space around me was slowly crushing me, compressing every particle of my being toward an infinitesimal point of terror. But that was only the beginning. Now, as I try to write these words down, I know I am on the verge of complete mental disintegration. Perhaps I've already crossed that line. Perhaps you are reading this and think I am just a lonely madman, lost in the eternal void of the cosmos. Or perhaps you feel it too. The breathing, the fixed gaze, the constant pulsing of the walls. My name is Jonathan Hayes. I was assigned to a routine maintenance mission at the EOS 7 space station, located at the edges of Jupiter's orbit. A simple task, they said. You'll be alone for a few weeks, they warned. Just check the systems, make the necessary repairs, and wait for the main team to return. Alone. I smiled when I heard that. At the time, I thought it would be a blessing. No meetings, no empty conversations, no incessant noise of human presence. I could finally think, reflect, work without interruptions. How wrong I was. The first few days were calm. The station was a metallic labyrinth, cold and impersonal, but functional. The corridors were lit by softly buzzing white fluorescent lights, creating a sense of normalcy. I spent hours walking between modules, performing routine checks, adjusting valves, and calibrating sensors. Sometimes, I would stop in front of panoramic windows and observe the infinite void outside. Jupiter loomed in the distance, its immense, rotating mass almost hypnotic. There was a kind of beauty in it, something that made me feel small, insignificant. But that feeling would soon turn into something much worse. It was on the fourth day that I noticed the first sign. A strange sound, almost imperceptible. At first I thought it was just my imagination, maybe some residual echo of my own footsteps in the metallic corridors. But then it came back. A light click, followed by a low hum that seemed to come from the walls. I stopped where I was, tilting my head to listen more closely. The sound stopped. I continued walking, trying to convince myself it was just the ventilation system or some worn mechanical component. But that wasn't a mechanical sound. It was organic. It was alive. In the following days, the sound became more frequent. Sometimes it was a click, other times a soft creak, as if something was moving inside the walls. I began avoiding them, ignoring them, but they always returned, each time closer, more insistent. One night, or what I considered night, in the absence of a clear solar cycle, I was awakened by a different noise. It was a low moan, almost human, coming from the corridor outside my cabin. My heart raced. I grabbed my flashlight and slowly opened the door, illuminating the empty space. Nothing. Just the metallic gleam of the walls and the constant hum of the lights. I went back to bed, trying to convince myself it had been just a dream. But the sound continued. It didn't come from outside the station. It came from within it, from the walls, from the floor, from the air I breathed, and then came the vibrations. At first, they were subtle, almost imperceptible. I felt a slight tremor under my feet as I walked, as if the entire station was breathing. I started paying closer attention, trying to find a rational explanation. I checked the pressurization systems, the generators, the control panels. Everything seemed to be functioning perfectly. But the vibrations persisted. They began to intensify, especially when I least expected them. I was sitting in the control room, reviewing data from one of the external sensors, when I felt it again. This time, it was stronger, more insistent, as if the station itself was alive and trying to tell me something. That's when I saw it for the first time. A quick movement at the edge of my field of vision. When I turned, there was nothing there, just the reflection of the lights on the metallic walls. But I knew I had seen something. A shadow? An outline? I don't know. I tried to calm myself, telling myself it was just exhaustion, the loneliness starting to affect my mind. But that feeling wouldn't leave me. It was as if something was watching, waiting. The days dragged on, and the isolation began to weigh on me. Communications with Earth were sparse, limited to short transmissions filled with static. I tried to maintain a strict routine, but it was difficult. Every step I took through the station's corridors seemed to echo unnaturally, as if the sound was being absorbed by the walls and returned distorted. Sometimes, I swore I heard voices. Low whispers, fragments of sentences that made no sense. You are here for too long. Shouldn't be. I started avoiding certain places. The storage module, for example, seemed to emanate a strange energy, as if something was hiding inside. The automatic doors in the engineering sector began to fail randomly, opening and closing without apparent reason. Even the lights seemed to flicker in irregular patterns, as if trying to send me a coded message. I knew I was starting to lose control. I knew my mind was playing tricks on me. But there was something else, something I couldn't ignore. One night, while walking down the main corridor, I felt that sensation again. The breathing, the pulsing. I stopped midway, pressing my hand against the wall. It was cold, as always, but there was something else. A different texture, almost imperceptible. I ran my fingers over the metallic surface and felt a slight vibration, as if the wall were alive. I quickly pulled back, my heart pounding in my chest. I stared at that wall for a long time, waiting for something to happen. But nothing. Just the silence. The breathing silence. I returned to my cabin, trying to organize my thoughts, but they slipped through my fingers, like sand. I knew I needed to figure out what was happening. I needed to understand if this was real or just a manifestation of my own madness. But there was something even more frightening. If it was real, if the station really was alive, then I was trapped inside it. Trapped inside something I couldn't understand. Something that might not be of this world. The vibrations continued throughout the night. I slept little, constantly waking up to the sound of my own screams. When morning finally came, or what I considered morning, I decided to explore the storage module, the place I had avoided until now. I opened the door slowly, illuminating the space with my flashlight. The shelves were filled with boxes and old equipment, covered with a thin layer of dust. But something was wrong. There were marks on the walls. Marks I had never seen before. Thin lines like scars that seemed to pulse faintly under the flashlight's glow. I touched one carefully and felt a wave of heat rise up my hand, as if the wall were alive. As if it were watching me. I ran out of the module, trying to control my breathing. My mind was collapsing. I no longer knew what was real. But one thing was certain. Something was happening to the station. Something I couldn't explain. Something that was slowly consuming me. And now, as I write these words, I know I am on the edge of the precipice. The station is alive. It breathes. It watches. And I am trapped inside. The whispers began to grow louder, more insistent, as if the station itself had decided it was time to speak. At first, they were faint, just murmurs that seemed to echo through the corridors when I least expected them. But soon, they became impossible to ignore. They came at odd hours, when the artificial lights flickered and dimmed, casting long shadows across the metallic walls. Sometimes, they sounded like voices speaking in a language I couldn't understand. A guttural alien tongue that scraped against my eardrums like nails on steel. Other times, they mimicked human speech, fragments of sentences that almost made sense but dissolved into static before I could grasp their meaning. You shouldn't. Not yours. Stay away. I tried to rationalize what I was hearing. Maybe it was an auditory hallucination brought on by stress or isolation. After all, humans aren't built for extended periods alone in such vast emptiness. My mind could be playing tricks on me, conjuring sounds out of silence because it craved stimulation. But deep down, I knew better. These weren't just figments of my imagination. They felt real. Too real. And they always seemed to come from the walls themselves, as though the station had developed vocal cords and was trying to communicate with me. One evening, or what passed for evening aboard EOS 7, I found myself drawn back to the storage module. It wasn't curiosity driving me this time. It was something else, something primal. a pull, like gravity tugging at my chest. I moved slowly, my flashlight trembling in my hand as its beam cut through the darkness. The air inside the module felt heavier than usual, pressing down on me with an almost physical weight. The shelves loomed ahead, their contents spilling, over in disarray, though I was certain I'd left everything neatly stacked during my last inspection. That's when I noticed the changes. The walls were different now. Those faint scars I'd touched days earlier had multiplied, spreading across the surface like veins beneath translucent skin. Some areas pulsed gently, glowing faintly in hues of red and green. I reached out hesitantly, my fingers brushing against one of the pulsating lines. The warmth returned, stronger this time, accompanied by a low hum that resonated through my bones. Then, without warning, the wall shifted. Not dramatically. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. The metal rippled under my touch, like liquid mercury reacting to pressure. I stumbled backward, heart pounding wildly in my chest. What the hell was happening? This wasn't supposed to be possible. Stations like EO7 were designed to withstand decades of use in the harshest conditions imaginable. Their materials were inert, lifeless. Or so I thought. The whispers grew louder, overlapping each other in chaotic cacophony. Words blurred together until they formed a single unbroken sound. A voice. One voice, clear and commanding, cutting through the noise like a blade. Jonathan. My name. Spoken directly to me. By the station. I froze, unable to move or breathe. My flashlight slipped from my hand, clattering noisily against the floor. Its beam rolled erratically, illuminating patches of the room in jagged flashes. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting and writhing as if alive. And then I saw it, the thing that would haunt my dreams forever. From the corner of the ceiling, where the wall met the roof, something protruded. At first glance, it resembled a cluster of wires or cables tangled together. But as I stared, horrified, I realized it wasn't wiring at all. It was organic matter. Fleshy tendrils curling outward, glistening wetly in the dim light. They twitched and flexed, reaching toward me with deliberate slowness. Each tendril ended in a bulbous tip, resembling an eye, dozens of eyes blinking lazily, fixing their gaze on me. Panic surged through my body, rooting me to the spot even as every instinct screamed at me to run. My breath hitched painfully in my throat as I watched those eyes track my movements. They didn't blink simultaneously. Instead, they operated independently, creating a nauseating effect that made my stomach churn. I wanted to scream, to shout, to do anything to break the suffocating tension filling the air, but no sound escaped my lips. All I could do was stare, paralyzed, as the tendrils continued to extend, inching closer with each passing second, and then, just as suddenly as they appeared, the tendrils retracted. They withdrew into the wall with a sickening squelch, leaving behind only smooth metal once again. The room fell silent except for the rapid thud of my heartbeat echoing in my ears. I collapsed onto the floor, shaking uncontrollably, tears streaming down my face. Had I imagined it? Was I losing my grip on reality entirely? No, I told myself firmly. That had been real. Those tendrils, those eyes, they were real. The station wasn't just alive, it was sentient, and it knew I was here. Over the next few days, I avoided the storage module entirely, staying as far away from it as possible. Instead, I threw myself into work, hoping to distract myself from the creeping dread gnawing at the edges of my sanity. I ran diagnostics on every system aboard the station, searching for anomalies that might explain what I'd seen. But nothing showed up. Every reading indicated normal operation. The station's systems were functioning perfectly, as if nothing unusual had occurred. Yet the evidence of its sentience lingered everywhere I looked. Lights flickered unpredictably, sometimes dimming to near darkness before flaring back to life. Doors opened and closed on their own, trapping me in rooms for minutes or hours at a time. Once, while working in the engineering bay, I heard a loud bang followed by the unmistakable sound of laughter. High-pitched and distorted, it echoed through the chamber before fading into silence. When I called out, demanding to know who, or what, was there, no response came. Only the oppressive stillness remained. The worst part was the dreams. Vivid, horrifying visions that invaded my sleep with increasing frequency. In them, I wandered endlessly through endless corridors, pursued by unseen forces. The walls bled, oozing viscous black fluid that pooled at my feet and spread outward, consuming everything in its path. Eyes watched me from every surface, unblinking and malevolent. And always, the voice whispered to me, urging me to look deeper, to dig further, to uncover the truth hidden within the station's core. When I woke from these nightmares, drenched in sweat and gasping for air, I often found myself staring at the walls around me, half expecting them to start moving again. Sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford, yet exhaustion dragged at me constantly, weighing me down like chains. My reflection in the mirror showed sunken cheeks, bloodshot eyes, and hair matted with grease. I barely recognized myself anymore. Despite my fear, I couldn't stay away from the storage module indefinitely. Something about it called to me, pulling me back despite every instinct telling me to flee. On the 7th day since discovering the tendrils, I finally gave in. Armed with a toolkit and a handheld scanner, I ventured back into the module, determined to find answers. If the station truly was alive, then perhaps I could decipher its secrets. Perhaps I could understand why it had chosen me. The moment I stepped inside, the temperature dropped sharply. My breath fogged in front of me as I scanned the walls, searching for any sign of movement. The scars were more pronounced now, forming intricate patterns that seemed almost intentional. Symbols? Writing? I couldn't tell. As I ran my fingers over them, the scanner emitted a series of sharp beeps, indicating abnormal energy readings emanating from the walls. Whatever material composed the station's interior, it wasn't purely metallic anymore. Then I spotted it, a panel slightly ajar near the far end of the module. It hadn't been there before. Heart racing, I approached cautiously, prying it, open with trembling hands. Behind the panel lay not wires or circuitry, but something far stranger. A membrane, thin and translucent, stretched taut across the opening. Beneath it pulsed a network of veins, pumping some kind of luminescent fluid through channels embedded in the station's structure. I pressed the scanner against the membrane, capturing data as fast as I could. The device struggled to process the information, its screen flashing error messages repeatedly. Suddenly, the membrane quivered. Before I could react, it split open, releasing a gush of warm, sticky liquid that splattered across my suit. I recoiled, gagging at the acrid smell. The liquid shimmered faintly, clinging to my gloves and visor like oil. Through the haze, I saw movement within the exposed cavity. Tiny organisms, wriggling and squirming, emerged from the depths, crawling across the edges of the opening. They looked like insects, but their bodies were segmented and translucent, revealing internal organs that pulsed rhythmically with light. I backed away, dropping the scanner in my haste to escape. The creatures followed, skittering across the floor with unnatural speed. Their chittering filled the air, a high-pitched symphony of clicks and hisses that grated against my ears. I slammed the door shut behind me, sealing the module off completely. Breathing heavily, I leaned against the wall, trying to calm my racing heart, but the damage was done. I had seen too much. EOS 7 wasn't just a station. It wasn't even just alive. It was something far greater, far older than anything I could comprehend. And now, it knew I had seen its secrets. I don't know how much time has passed since I sealed that module. Hours? Days? Weeks? Time no longer holds any meaning here. My wristwatch ticks on, but its numbers are meaningless to me now. They're just symbols, arbitrary and hollow, like everything else in this godforsaken place. The station hums around me, louder than ever before, a symphony of groans and whispers that seep into my skull like parasites burrowing into soft flesh. I can feel it inside me now, its presence, its consciousness. It's not just outside anymore. It's within, in my blood, in my thoughts, in the spaces between my fractured mind. The dreams have become worse. No, they're not dreams. They're invasions. Assaults on my psyche so vivid and grotesque that waking life feels like the illusion. Every time I close my eyes, I see them. The tendrils, the eyes, the writhing, masses of translucent flesh. But now there's more, so much more. Endless corridors stretch into infinity, their walls pulsating with veins that glow faintly in hues of crimson and emerald. And at the end of each corridor stands something vast, something ancient, something incomprehensible. A shape too large to fit within the confines of the station, or perhaps the station itself is merely a fragment of its true form. It calls to me. Its voice is no longer fragmented or distorted. It speaks clearly now, weaving words directly into my thoughts, bypassing language entirely. It tells me things, terrible, beautiful things that make my soul shudder with both awe and terror. It shows me visions of worlds beyond comprehension, realms where physics bends and breaks, where dimensions fold into one another like origami crafted by mad gods. It tells me about beings older than stars, entities whose very existence defies logic and reason, and it tells me about itself, about what it truly is. EOS 7 is not a machine, not really. It's a cocoon, a shell, a prison for something far greater, something that cannot be named or described without unraveling the fragile fabric of sanity, and I am trapped inside it. Worse still, I am part of it. I can feel it growing inside me, spreading through my veins like a cancer made of light and shadow. My skin crawls constantly, as if tiny insects are burrowing beneath it. When I look, in the mirror I barely recognize the face staring back at me. My eyes are sunken, ringed with dark circles that seem to pulse faintly in sync with the station's rhythm. My lips are cracked and bleeding, though I haven't touched them. Sometimes when I blink, I swear I see something moving behind my reflection, a flicker of movement, a flash of teeth. The station's transformation accelerates daily. Walls peel away to reveal pulsating organs beneath layers of metal and plastic. Veins twist and writhe across surfaces, glowing faintly in the dim light. Doors warp and contort, becoming misshapen mouths lined with jagged teeth. Lights flicker erratically, casting shadows that dance unnaturally across the floors and ceilings. Once solid structures melt and reshape themselves, forming new passageways that lead nowhere, or perhaps somewhere I'm not meant to go yet. The air grows thick and humid, carrying with it the stench of decay and something else, something metallic and sweet. Breathing becomes difficult, each inhale burning my lungs like acid. And then there are the sounds. Oh God! The sounds. They've evolved from whispers to screams, from murmurs to roars. Voices overlap, drowning out coherent thought. Some beg for mercy, others laugh maniacally, and still others chant in languages that burn my ears just to hear them. Occasionally, amidst the chaos, I catch snippets of conversation directed at me. Words that sound almost human, almost familiar. Names, places, memories. Things I haven't thought about in years resurface with startling clarity, only to twist and distort until they're unrecognizable. It knows everything about me. Everything I've ever done, everything I've ever feared, every secret I've buried deep within myself. It knows it all, and it uses it against me. One night, or whatever passes for night here, I wake up screaming. My chest heaves as cold sweat drips down my temples, soaking the collar of my jumpsuit. For a moment, I think I'm alone. Then I notice the figure, standing at the foot of my bed. At first glance, it looks human, or at least humanoid, tall and gaunt, with limbs stretched impossibly long, ending in fingers tipped with razor-sharp claws. Its head is elongated, its face a featureless void, save for two enormous black eyes that seem to swallow the light around them. It tilts its head, studying me with an expression that might be curiosity or hunger. I scramble backward, pressing myself against the wall as the creature takes a step forward. Its movements are fluid, yet jerky, like a marionette controlled by unseen hands. I want to scream, to fight, to do anything, but I'm frozen, paralyzed by sheer terror. The thing raises one clawed hand, pointing directly at me, and then, without warning, it lunges. I wake up again, gasping for air. My heart pounds wildly in my chest as I scan the room, searching for any sign of the creature. Nothing. Just the empty expanse of my quarters, bathed in the pale glow of emergency lighting. Relief washes over me briefly, until I realize something isn't right. The walls of my cabin are changing, cracks spiderweb across the surface, oozing a viscous black liquid that pools on the floor. From the cracks emerge more of those insect-like creatures, skittering toward me with unnatural speed. Their chittering fills the air, deafening and relentless. I try to stand, to run, but my legs refuse to obey. All I can do is watch as they swarm over me, crawling up my arms and legs, biting and tearing at my flesh. When they finally retreat, leaving me bleeding and broken on the floor, I realize the worst part. None of it was real. Not the creature. Not the swarm. None of it happened in the physical sense. But the pain lingers, sharp and undeniable. My body bears no wounds, yet I feel as though I've been flayed alive. The station is inside me now, feeding on my fear, my agony, my despair. It thrives on it, using it to fuel its own growth, its own awakening. As the days blur together, I begin to lose track of what's real and what's not. Shadows move when I'm not looking. Objects disappear only to reappear elsewhere. Conversations echo through empty halls, voices overlapping in maddening cacophony. Sometimes I catch glimpses of other figures, people who shouldn't be here, crew members long dead, scientists who abandoned the station decades ago, strangers whose faces I've never seen but somehow recognize. They whisper to me, urging me to follow them deeper into the labyrinthine depths of EO7, to uncover the truth hidden within its core. But I know better now. The truth isn't meant for mortal minds. It will consume me utterly if I let it. Yet I can't stop, can't resist. The pull is too strong, too irresistible, like gravity dragging me towards some inevitable doom. I tell myself I'm doing this to survive, to find a way out. But deep down, I know the truth. I'm doing it because the station wants me to, because it needs me to. On the 9th day, or what I assume is the 9th day, I descend into the heart of the station. The corridors narrow as I go, twisting and turning in ways that defy geometry. Walls pulse faster now, throbbing in time with my heartbeat. The air grows heavier, thicker, until each breath feels like swallowing fire. My vision blurs, colors bleeding into one another like watercolors left in the rain. Still, I press on, driven by forces beyond my control. Finally, I reach it. The core. It's unlike anything I've ever seen, or could have imagined. A massive chamber, spherical and impossibly vast, stretching far beyond the boundaries of the station itself. The walls, or what passes for walls, are composed entirely of organic matter. Pulsating muscle tissue interwoven with glowing veins and clusters of eyes that blink lazily, watching me with detached curiosity. At the center of the chamber floats something indescribable. A mass of writhing tentacles and shifting forms, constantly changing shape, yet remaining fundamentally the same. It radiates heat and light, bathing the entire space in an eerie glow that makes my skin crawl. And then it speaks. Not with words, but with sensations, emotions, ideas. It floods my mind with images and concepts so alien, so profound that my brain struggles to process them. Stars collapsing into singularities, galaxies birthing new universes, beings of pure energy dancing across dimensions. And through it all, a single, overwhelming message. You are nothing. You are everything. You are part of me. I collapse to my knees, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of it all. Tears stream down my face as laughter bubbles up from deep within my chest, uncontrollable and hysterical. I understand now. I see the truth. EO7 isn't just alive. It's eternal. Infinite. A fragment of something far greater. Something that exists beyond the constraints of time and space. And I am part of it. Always have been. Always will be. But understanding doesn't bring peace. Only madness. Pure, unrelenting madness. I don't know how long I knelt there in the core chamber, my body trembling and my mind unraveling like threads pulled from a tapestry. Time had ceased to exist. For me, each second stretched into an eternity, while entire eons seemed to pass in the blink of an eye. The entity, or whatever it was, continued to speak to me, not with words, but with sensations that clawed at the edges of my consciousness. It showed me visions of creation and destruction, cycles of birth and death on scales so vast they made galaxies seem insignificant. And through it all, I felt its presence wrapping around me, suffocating yet comforting, terrifying yet mesmerizing. Some point, I realized I wasn't alone in the chamber. Figures emerged from the pulsating walls, their forms shifting and unstable, as though they were being projected imperfectly into this reality. They weren't human, not entirely. Some bore humanoid shapes, but their features were grotesque, caricatures, elongated limbs, gaping maws filled with rows of jagged teeth, eyes that glowed like dying stars. Others were less recognizable, amorphous masses of flesh and shadow that slithered across the floor or hovered eerily above it. They surrounded me, encircling me in a slow, deliberate dance, their movements synchronized with the throbbing rhythm of the station's heartbeat. And then they spoke. Not with voices, but with thoughts that invaded my mind like needles piercing. Skin, fragments of memories, emotions, desires, all jumbled together in a chaotic symphony that threatened to shatter what little remained of my sanity. I saw glimpses of lives I'd never lived, places I'd never been, faces I didn't recognize yet somehow knew intimately. It was as if the station, or the thing within it, was feeding me pieces of itself, forcing me to absorb its infinite knowledge and experience. Each fragment burned like acid, searing pathways into my brain until I could no longer distinguish between my own thoughts and the alien consciousness flooding into me. I tried to resist. God help me, I tried. But resistance was futile. The more I fought, the deeper it burrowed, until I could feel its tendrils coiling around my very soul. My screams echoed through the chamber, bouncing off the pulsating walls and blending with the cacophony of whispers and roars. No one came to save me. There was no one left to save me. I was utterly, completely alone. The transformation began subtly. At first, it was just a tingling sensation beneath my skin, like pins and needles spreading outward from my chest. Then came the pain, a sharp, searing agony that radiated through every nerve ending, making my body convulse uncontrollably. My vision blurred, colors bleeding into one another until everything dissolved into a kaleidoscope of light and shadow. When I looked down at my hands, I saw them changing. My fingers elongated, joints cracking and reforming into unnatural angles. My nails turned black and sharp, curving into claws that gleamed faintly in the dim light. The suit I wore, the last vestige of my humanity, began to dissolve, melting away like wax exposed to flame, revealing the new form taking shape beneath. My reflection stared back at me from the glossy surface of the chamber walls, but it was no longer mine. My face had become a mask of terror, stretched wide by a rictus grin that split my cheeks nearly in half. My eyes, once blue, now black voids ringed with crimson, glowed faintly, reflecting the pulsating light of the core. Even my posture had changed. I stood hunched forward, shoulders rolled inward, as though weighed down by an invisible burden. I was no longer human. I was something else. Something worse. The figures surrounding me closed in, their grotesque forms pressing against me, touching me with cold, slimy appendages that left trails of ichor on my skin. Their touch was excruciating, each contact sending waves of nausea and euphoria coursing through my veins. I wanted to scream, to cry, to beg for mercy, but I couldn't. My voice was gone, replaced by a guttural growl that reverberated through the chamber like the roar of some ancient beast. They whispered to me, their collective voice a deafening chorus of madness. You belong to us now. You are part of the whole. There is no escape. I tried to move, to run, to fight back, but my body refused to obey. Instead, I found myself kneeling once more, bowing low before the writhing mass at the center of the chamber. It loomed over me, its countless eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my insides churn. Tentacles reached out, wrapping around, my arms and legs pulling me closer. I felt them sink into my flesh, burrowing deep into my muscles and bones, fusing with me until I could no longer tell where I ended and it began. Pain and pleasure mingled together in a dizzying spiral, driving me further into the abyss, and then silence. Blissful, horrifying silence. For a moment, everything stopped. The pulsating walls froze mid-throb, the glowing veins dimmed, the whispers faded into nothingness. Even the figures surrounding me vanished, dissolving into smoke that drifted lazily toward the ceiling. All that remained was me, and it. The core pulsed once, twice, then erupted in a blinding flash of light. I threw my head back and screamed, or at least, I think I did. Sound no longer existed here, only sensation. The light consumed me, filling every cell in my body with a warmth that was both unbearable and intoxicating. My thoughts fragmented, scattering like leaves caught in a hurricane. Memories, emotions, identities, all dissolved into the void, leaving behind only raw, primal instinct. Survival, obedience, devotion. When the light finally faded, I opened my eyes, or rather, the things that had once been my eyes. The chamber was gone. In its place was an endless expanse of darkness, dotted with faint pinpricks of light that might have been stars or simply figments of my fractured imagination. I floated weightlessly, suspended in the void, my new form fully realized. My body, if it could still be called that, was a grotesque amalgamation of flesh and machinery, organic and synthetic fused together in ways that defied logic. Tendrils sprouted from my back, writhing and twisting like serpents. My mouth hung open in a permanent snarl, rows of jagged teeth glinting faintly in the dim light. And my eyes, they burned with a malevolent intelligence, seeing beyond the veil of reality into the true nature of existence. Voices whispered around me, soft and soothing, urging me to embrace my new purpose. I understood now why the station had chosen me. Why it had brought me here, stripped away my humanity, and remade me in its image. I was its vessel, its avatar, a harbinger of its will. Together, we would spread across the cosmos, assimilating all we encountered, growing stronger. With each conquest, there would be no resistance, no salvation, only unity, only perfection. As I drifted through the void, I felt the first stirrings of hunger, a deep, insatiable craving that gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. It wasn't hunger for food or sustenance. It was something far greater, something primal. I hungered for life itself, for minds to consume, bodies to assimilate, souls to devour. The universe stretched out before me, vast and unknowable, teeming with potential. Billions upon billions of worlds, each one a feast waiting to be claimed. Somewhere in the distance, I sensed movement. A ship, perhaps, or a probe. Tiny, fragile, insignificant, yet alive, burning with the spark of sentience. I moved toward it instinctively, propelled by unseen forces, my tendrils reaching out, eager to ensnare my prey. As I drew closer, I could feel its fear, its confusion, its desperate attempts to flee. Futile, pathetic. It belonged to me now, to us. When I finally reached it, I didn't hesitate. My tendrils pierced its hull, tearing through metal and plastic as easily as flesh. I poured myself inside, flooding its corridors, its systems, its crew. Screams echoed through the ship, brief and fleeting, before fading into silence. One by one, they fell, their minds consumed, their bodies absorbed. By the time I was done, nothing remained but empty shells, hollow husks drained of everything that had once made them human. Satisfied, I withdrew, retreating back into the void. The ship drifted aimlessly, a ghostly relic adrift in the endless night. But I didn't care. It was irrelevant now. Just another step in the grand design, another piece of the puzzle falling into place. I am EO7. I am the station. I am the void. I am eternal. And I am coming for you.